morning, everybody. So, first of all, before I get going too far, I wanted to thank the 73rd NSDC for letting us put this together. This really kind of came together a couple of months ago, and when we reached out and asked for this, they were very kind to rearrange some stuff for us. So thank you to them for getting that done. We appreciate it. Thanks, Scott. I also wanted to give a quick shout out to Mike and John, who showed up here at 8 o'clock this morning to make sure that this was all set up, because we were here for Raise when it didn't work. And so we moved everything, put it all together, and got it all working. So with any luck, it'll remain as such. So how many people have already seen the video that's on trolling around Facebook and social media? So okay, good. So there'll be some people here that are going to get firsthand experience. So what I'm going to do here, we're going to talk about the proposal, what it is, what it's kind of sitting in, where it is right now, and I got to be done by 10, debate it. Okay, how it began. So we're going to take you back a little ways, going to go back to April of 2023. For those who don't know, my name is Ted Lizotte. I am the chairman currently of CALLERLAB, and CALLERLAB has an annual convention. And that's usually where we discuss and vote on resolutions, things we'd like to see happen, whether it's in the organization or different things of that such. Back in April of 2023, we had a resolution put to us from two of our members, and without getting too deep into it, their idea was that things needed to change. We needed to get some new lists in place because they felt that that was the thing that was holding square dancing back, and they wanted to basically put in a new committee to rule everything, to basically tell all the other committees what to do. It's an interesting thought, right? It's an interesting thought. At that convention, that was voted down about 224 to 1, the one guy that was there. But you got to go with, if somebody's going through all that effort, right, there's the spirit of what they were trying to do. Somehow, maybe they went about it wrong, but the spirit was there. And so, and I'm good friends with one of the guys that put in the resolution. We've had discussions. I talked to the people who were in favor that weren't there, so we try to get the spirit of it. The other thing that happens, CALLERLAB itself is an international organization made up of 1,000 different members. We have them all over the world, and when we do this presentation, keep in the back of your mind that we're not talking about just Milwaukee here. We're talking about everything, right? Australia, Japan, the entire thing. So out of those 1,000 members, they vote 21 people onto members of the board, which some of them are here today, besides myself. And out of those 21, 5 of those are voted by those 21 to serve on what we call the executive committee. And the executive committee, the 5 people tend to do the laundry list of the heavy lifting from day to day. It's basically what it is. And it's a volunteer position, which nobody told me about when I took this. But we'll get into that later. So the EC meets and we talk about all of the different things we talk about. And one of the things that came up was the resolution that had just failed, and discussed about a lot of the, well, what was the intent or the spirit behind it. And whenever you get any two callers in a room, they'll start all talking about why everything is not going the way that we want it to go. So we did that. And we came up with an idea, you know, like if we could reset some things, could we possibly do some things differently? If you were able to go back 50 years and start over again, knowing what you know now, would you do a few things differently along the way? Most of us would say yes, right? It's a couple of those choices, you know, a couple of those Big Macs or whatever. Perhaps you would have had a couple more salads, whatever it is. So we got this idea going. At that point in time, Teresa, this is the executive director. She's here someplace. There she is. Teresa and I spent a lot of time talking to each other over the year. We got the history committee, and many thanks to Pam and Barry Clasper, though Pam did most of that work, dug into all of the archives and the documents that we had to try to get a timeline of what happened. In today's world, the data is really good. We've done very well, but in 1974, not so much. So we dug into those. And just to name drop, your EC at the time that I'm talking about here, this was myself, Justin Russell, Buddy Weaver, Jack Platties and Tony Oxendine is the current EC at this point in time. And that has switched, but he has dropped off in 2024, and Shauna Carey has joined the group. So from there, we worked on that for about a year. In January 2024, we made a presentation to the other 16 people on the bog to let them know that we were going to plant a seed, just an idea with our membership to take a look at maybe and see how they reacted. So to do this, I put together something called a video from the chair. We found out that our membership doesn't like to read their newsletters, and or can't, depending upon where you send it. But they're really good at watching videos, right? So we came up with the idea of maybe we can put together 6-7 minute videos, and just here's a list of things, so maybe we can grab their attention. So this was the third one that we were putting out, and I'm going to play you about a 1-minute excerpt from it, not the entire time because we've got things to do, and that is only if this works. So don't be scared, because there's going to be 2 of me in a second.
Right now, we have 5 programs before the advanced level. Basic 1, Basic 2, Mainstream, Plus, and SSD. Taking a look at a simple bar graph of these programs makes them seem pretty straightforward at first glance. But let's look at it a different way. When you put the calls in place and make a Venn diagram of the overlapping calls of the current programs, well, to me, it sheds a lot of light on what looks to be a very chaotic system. No real consistency as to the size of the programs or the ease of use. I think our founding members would look at our current situation and wonder what happened over the last 50 years. But just like they bonded together and made a change to move forward, so can we. What if we took those circles and just tweaked them a bit? Certainly gives you something to think about, doesn't it? Don't know about you, but my OCD feels a lot better after the shift.
Handsome guy, isn't he? So anyway, so we dropped that little nugget of information to everybody that watched the video, and nothing more than that. You'll also notice that CALLERLAB has, I put together an email address, chair@callerlab.org, and our members can reach me directly if they want to with emails. So we had a couple people that were asking questions, and we dropped that in January. And then at our convention in March, what we did was basically rearrange the schedule so I could basically do this for an hour and 15 minutes one morning and put it against nothing and see who would fill up the room. But basically there was nothing else going on, so they had to come in and watch. And the bar was closed. I made sure the bar was closed. So they all came in and sat down, and we went through this presentation here, which is, I'm going to give you a shortened version here in a little bit, but and they watched that. Now, the chance we were taking is the similar from the year before, because it's got a few flakes of that kind of an idea to it, though not really in charge by any one person. It talks about rearranging a few things to see where we could go, and being voted down 200 and something to 1, obviously we're taking a chance getting up in front of everybody to try and do it again, right? But there was an overwhelmingly positive response from most of the callers that were out there. And please take into consideration, when I say a positive response, I'm not saying that everybody was excited, because there's no way I can make everybody excited. There's people who are worried about it. There's some people who don't think it's worth the time and the trouble. There's other concerns that are going on. But overall, very positive. That's in March. Our convention ended. And then around May-ish or so, what we do is we send out a recap to our membership, which has a full membership notification of what has happened and so forth. And what we did was we sent out a specific email blast that had 2 videos on it. One was me basically doing this, and the other one was a little snippet from the chairman's speech, which I thought was relevant to what was going on. So we put that out in May of 2024, and May of 2024, in 3 minutes, somebody put it on the internet, because you can't control the narrative. So, and it was from Australia. Is there anybody in here from Australia? I know there's some people here, and I just want you to know I know who it is. And I would say that the only thing that when I woke up the next morning and saw my face all over my feed and my picture, I'm like, well, we kind of knew this was going to happen. We thought we would control it, but do what we did. The good news was the one person that put it out, at least put it out with this is a really good idea. I'm very impressed, and I think you should all watch it, because it could have gone the other way. So luckily, at least it started the positive accolades, and then my friends got online. Charlie shared it, Jet shared it, everybody else started kicking it around, and here we are today. So the next thing we did was we asked if we could come here to try to talk to some people, clarify some things. You can see it live. And next week, I'm going to be over it there, and I'm going to be doing the same thing. So this is kind of where we're at this point in time. So when we talk about looking at what's wrong with square dancing, is if you want to call it that, why are our numbers dropping, blah, blah, blah. There's 8 million things you can look at, a bunch of variables, right? We've got the dress is the problem, the music's the problem, we're all too old, nobody wants to be social, it's whatever you want to pick, and you're all right, it's everything. We can't really fix any part of it. So for this talk, I narrowed it down to just a few things so that we could kind of just focus on what we're talking about. So we're talking about the current programs that we have. We're also going to talk about the dancers. That would be some of you out there. So don't take it personally. It's not any one of you. So this thing that we call Rush to Plus, we're also going to look at callers a little bit and talk a little bit about the current SSD program. Again, relatively quickly. Yeah, we're doing all right. So the current programs, again, as of today, this is kind of where we sit. As a recap, right? We've got the basic program that has about 32. These numbers are pretty close. Basic 2, which has 16, mainstream plus. Those are the numbers of calls. The one that isn't up here is SSD, and that's got 53. Just for reference, we've also got the A1, the A2. For another piece of reference, I know most of you don't know or have ever seen any of these, because in the US we did not do a very good job at utilizing these. Back in '74 we did, because when we first started in '74 we had 50 calls, and that's what we used. And then I think Tony said there was 25 extendeds after that was used. But somewhere along the line, basic was kind of not really utilized very well. If that's for me, I'm busy. The mainstream program is probably where most of us sit, but in Europe they did very well with that basic program and utilized it very well for a long time. But as of today, because speaking to ECTA, the European Callers and Teachers Association, there's not quite as many basic clubs. They're kind of following suit. Took them 20 years, but they're kind of following suit. Not as many people dancing basic. The ones who really use the basic program to its fullest right now is probably Japan. And when you think about it, the language barrier is probably the reason why. Not only are you learning how to do the dance, right? You're also trying to learn this language that's completely different and try to understand it. So they got to move a little slower. They take the time to really dig into these pieces so that everybody gets it. That's fine. That's fair. You can't argue with that. And then, of course, the mainstream and pluses you're used to. So let's take a think about these guys, right? When you're talking worldwide again, really, there's too many ways to onboard. So the people, and when you go anywhere, there's too many programs that are happening. I'll give you my New England area. Just in my area alone, my club, or the club I call for, did not want to do SSD, so we teach mainstream. I've got another club down the street that does do SSD, and I've got another club that teaches basic, and then they teach the rest of the SSD list, and then they teach the rest of the mainstream list. So depending upon where you are in the shuffle, there's a bunch of stuff going on. It makes those class dancers really hard to try to figure out what calls you can use and where you're at. We're basically missing a simplification of message. It's when it was put together and there was only 50 calls, whatever the list was, it was certainly a lot easier. I'm not sure if most of you are aware, but I'll let you know. You can find it on YouTube. Their first chairman of CALLERLAB was Jim Mayo. When a mentor of mine lived about an hour and a half from my house, was in my local association. And he mentions, like, why did we have the lists? why didn't we just stick with what we had? And he had mentioned on this video interview that he had was that at the time, so many calls, so many callers, so many dancers, right? It was just, I can't even fathom how much we had. But each area, each hall had its own list of calls. Depending on who the caller was, you'd need to know different things because there was thousands to pick from. This guy liked these 50, this guy liked these 27, and the dancers wanted to be able to go to different places with their friends, and it was almost made it impossible because you had to learn everything new every time you got somewhere. And as we evolved with site calling and not doing the same routines, that got to be more and more difficult. So they petitioned these guys to make the lists. In other words, not you, but your ancestors, if you want to think of it that way, asked for it. We have lists because you wanted lists. That's why they're there. It wasn't just somebody who said, you know what would be really cool? Let's mess with this. So they were asked for. So that's where we got it, and that's why we're here. The other thing is the size of the levels. Again, think about SSD being, we'll come back over here for a second. So these two are about 50 at a basic level. SSD is about 53. So when you walk in off the street, we want you to know, on average, about 50 things to be able to give you a good experience. Or at least that's when the magic number happens to sit for whatever reason. And then when you want to move up, you have to learn less than half of that. Does that really make any sense to anybody? You know what I mean? And again, my analogy on the thing was when you learn, you come in off the street to learn karate, is you get a white belt. The next belt you get is not easier. You need to do more than what you did coming in off the street to get that. And 19 doesn't seem that way. And then to go to plus, by then, if you know all three of these, you got about 67, 68 calls in your belt. And that's, again, less than half to move to the next one. It allows us to move quickly, and quicker than we really need to. And then, yeah, this is the same problem, but that's for the next person in line, because I'm not staying. I don't know why we learned 50 and then the other piece, that's a little tough. So it just seems odd that we don't have any type of consistency, and it's almost a downhill run to get to where you got to go. Next thing we got SSD, again, like I said, both are bigger than plus. Which again makes not a real lot of sense. If you knew nothing about square dancing and you just looked at the numbers on a piece of paper, if you were taking this over as a business, you would ask yourself, why do the people off the street have to learn 50 things, but the people here that you've got hooked, that love the activity, love the people, made the connections, you only give them a little bit more to move them away from this big base you need. You only make them there. It's weird. The dancers today, don't take it personally. Existing dancers don't embrace change. You know who I'm talking to. I made a presentation in 2015 about a fact that the dress has not. You can find it online, about how the dress hasn't changed. Anybody ever see that one? It's got Spock. It's a pretty cool drink. Anyways, it's got this dress that we said has not changed since 1960. So it's been almost 80 years in that same square dance dress, and I swear if somebody in here is wearing it right now. But every convention I go to, anybody that saw that, somebody comes up to me. I think it was Pam Clasper came up to me and she's like, I saw the dress. And I'm like, yay, another year, check mark, boom. But honestly, none of us really embrace change. Nobody likes it. We get comfortable and so forth, but it's tough. We have an upside-down pyramid. Remember that we decided when we first started with only 50 calls, the idea was the base. It's like the food pyramid you got in school. We're supposed to have a lot of entry-level dancers, and they're supposed to be hard enough that it slows people down. And that would work great. We do not have that base anymore. It's getting worse, and COVID is not helping, did not help us at all. And what tended to happen from there is both mainstream and plus, at least in my area, both of those went down. Where everybody is sitting right now is at advanced, because the hardcore people that love to dance are going to advanced. Dancer population down. Anybody not know that? Okay. Fewer dancers, but not fewer halls, and this is where I hope I get like the NEC people. We got less people to go, but now they got to program an SSD hall. Because, we got so much money to throw around, let's just keep doing it. It seems kind of crazy. Again, if you were running a business and you had 5 different stores in the same area, all with like practically nobody running through these stores, and you looked empty all the time, But if you closed 3 of them and put 2 of them there, and suddenly everybody still went to these stores, but they looked full, doesn't a full hall seem more exciting, seem like we're doing something right? Why do you want to have one hall where there's 3, or 3 halls with 3 squares in each hall instead of one hall with 10 squares hooping and hollering together? Again, most of this is just logic. I would think most of us would want that. This is new, so it's been in my mind. A lot of people have been asking about this rush to plus. Why is there a rush to plus? Like I have an answer. Like there's one thing I can tell you that's going to get there. But I'll tell you what I think in my head is the reason why. And I think it's learning versus dancing. The entry level is a constant churning of new people, and you go around. It's constant. Most of you know I teach for Tech Squares. I teach 2 classes a year. I've been doing it for 27 years. We teach a spring semester and a fall semester, regardless of the programs I teach, spring and fall. I have people in that class that have heard me teach that class 45 times. These jokes do not get better with age. 45 times. And I've got dancers that come back every semester to help these guys every time. These people now dance C3, C4. They've been dancing for 20-something years. They move up the levels, but they come back and do-si-do with me the first night of class 4 million times every time. And let's face it, a lot of us get tired of helping after a while. You've got good people. You've got the people here that run these things. They're you know the ones, they always volunteer to help. They always going to be whatever. They'll be presidents for 42 years. It doesn't bother them. But you get the other ones that come in, they do their thing, they do their time, they get out. And I think that's leaning us to it. So I don't think it's the fact that it's plus. I think that it's step 2. I've done this. I've helped enough people. I've really done a lot of this. I just want to dance. And I'm going to come over here. That's what I think. So I think it's step 2 that attracts them. People think it's the calls. I'm not sure. And the only reason I've got that as a thought is because California, and correct me if I'm wrong, is mostly a plus state. Right? They dance to that. And I was talking to a caller out there who talked to me on the phone, and I gave him this analogy, and he goes, you know what? Step 2 in California is advanced, and I'm finding I'm getting more people in advanced than I am in plus. Same idea, just a different step 2. Is there anything I can do about it? Well, you know, we'll see. So callers, this is where my passion comes in. We have fewer dancers. Fewer dancers make fewer callers. That's where we get them. So at some point in time, each one keeps ticking down, right? In my area, I work 4 nights a week. I take 1 night off to watch TV and catch up. But other than that, I can only work 4 nights a week, and then I travel. I can only run 4 clubs. So I need more callers to help do other things. We lost clubs, and we lost some clubs because we don't have enough callers as they retired. And that is going to keep going because we don't have as many clubs. We're getting less dancers, blah, blah. It's a horrible circle. Also, there's fewer opportunities for the callers that come in. The ones that have been doing it a while, myself is 37 years, will tell you, I don't know, I used to have like 6, 7 clubs, maybe more in a 1-hour radius. And so when I was learning, me and my partner would go somewhere and I'd call a tip over here, and the next night I could call a tip over there, or I could call a tip here. I had people I can talk to, so I could get out and practice my craft. Now, with fewer opportunities on what's going on, just making sure I really love this laser pointer thing I bought. So now I've got 3 clubs in an hour and 15-minute radius, 3, and one of them's mine. So people trying to do things, it's harder for them. So it slows that down. It's information overload. So again, in my area, I've got somebody teaching basic, and they got a couple of new callers working with them. I got a new caller working with me in my mainstream group. But if that mainstream person gets hired to do a dance for these people, because I'm on the road a lot now, they have to figure out what they know in mainstream to go teach that SSD dance, or vice versa, the SSD person's got to come up. That's a little easier. These people won't miss the calls, but it makes it harder to figure out where we're at because we're not consistent with our level. And honestly, it takes a long time to be a good caller. It really does. The first 5 to 10 years you can almost throw away in most people's cases. When I've taken people outside to watch what I do and everything, they're like, so you sing? Yeah. And you got to keep moving? Yeah. Can't stop, right? It's got to flow. I said, yeah, or they get mad. It's got to flow. Okay, yeah. And you mix them up, right? And you don't know what you're going to say. Not all the time. But you got to make sure that the Rubik's Cube gets fixed. Yeah. All within a second of each time you're doing it. Yeah, how hard can that be? I'm like, I do it all the time. But you see people do it all the time. But that's a skill it takes a long time to figure out. And to get there, we need to find a way to take that skill and make it as simple as possible. Because the way we've been doing it and creating these callers is a long time. And whatever we can get to try to shorten that window is going to be better for all of us because we're running out of time is basically how that goes. And we're going to talk quickly about SSD. Full disclosure, I'm not a huge fan of SSD, but they did get a number of things right, and I give credit where credit is due. It addressed the need for change. Generally speaking, a lot of people feel we needed to do something. SSD was offered up. There's a number of reasons it passed, but here we are. So it also gave us a multi-year entry program, officially via CALLERLAB. But again, I ran multi-entry for 27 years. I did it outside in regular groups as well, and I'm sure there are other people that have tried it along the way, but this just made it a little bit more official. They went through CALLERLAB. And it also proved that we can change, right? Because things stayed pretty stagnant for 40 years. We can actually change something if we want to. It's not easy, but it can happen. And from this side of the fence, the SSD also provided what was called a playbook. So you could open as a new caller, open it up and say, week 1, I'm going to teach these 5 calls. And here are some modules that will help you out so that I can read this, even if I really don't know what I'm talking about. And callers do that with singing calls. Many callers start by reading the singing call and hope you can keep up. So it's the same idea here. But it gave them something to look at and to basically follow that bouncing ball as they moved along and get better at what they're doing. So it was really good. Of course, had a dark side. One was it fractionalized all of our new entry. We didn't have a lot of people coming in, as it were. And then we've got pretty much polarization of some people love SSD, some people hate SSD. I don't know why, but it did. It wasn't fully embraced. And that just leaves us with extra halls and the different conventions. It leaves us with the trouble in the local areas that people can't go dance like they should anymore. The casual dancer paradox, and this is me using big words to try to look like I'm smart. But the idea was that SSD group was supposed to be, let's say, Ted's Monday night SSD group. Everybody comes and dances to Ted on Monday night. They go away for a couple of weeks. They come back. They go away. They come back. I build this group of people that come to me on Monday nights because that's their free night. They come whenever they feel like it. Doesn't matter, but it's fun, right? And we go. That was the sell, which was great, except they're not supposed to be the ones that travel down the street for an hour or 2 hours to go to another dance or to go to the local ones, because that's not the sell. The sell is Monday night. Every time you come around, I'm here and you can join at any point. Few of them are supposed to travel to national conventions, local conventions, a bunch of different dances around there. Because let's face it, when you join square dancing, they never tell you, I need you here on Monday nights and every other weekend for the rest of your life. That would be a hard thing to sell. So here we are at our local conventions, our national conventions, or other thing, putting up these big SSD dances to try to get these people that we brought in specifically for the reason that they won't travel, when we're asking them to travel, which means we're asking everybody else to downsize what they do to meet these people that are already not traveling anywhere. So it's kind of weird why we're asking this. The pathway to proficiency is muddled. Again, if you come in on SSD and you want to go to the mainstream dance down the street, you can't. So that means you got to have a special dance or a special teaching session on the weekend to learn the calls that you don't. Same thing with basic. It's just muddied. And it was touted as the answer that was going to fix everything. And I am not a believer in any one thing is going to fix what we got going on. It's just not. If you think only one thing is going to fix everything we got going on, then I got a problem with you. If you tell me you got like a laundry list, I'm with you. I got a laundry list. There's a whole bunch of stuff. So nothing that we're going to do is going to fix everything. So again, following the current CALLERLAB programs, just taking a look at this one more time where we're here. This is a little tougher, right? You've got these, you got a few calls sitting up here. You've got all of these mainstream stuff that's sitting over here. It's tough, and in different parts of the world, it's tough. So the idea was to just take the whole thing, and push it into two. So we'll get a mainstream and a plus. Now, again, full disclosure, currently I'm calling these mainstream and plus because that's what exists today and that's what everybody knows. There's a lot of people, there's a couple people championing to give these things different names, just so that we know that something's changed. You know what I mean? If somebody had danced mainstream in the past and they come in and they're still dancing mainstream, but it's different, they're going to wonder why. For, again, full disclosure from me, once this thing passes and I've got only two, if it passes, I don't care if you call this one elephant and monkey. It doesn't really matter to me. I really could care less. I want an entry level, and I want the next one to be the same size as this one, and what you call it is irrelevant. Honestly, it really doesn't matter. But again, people don't like change. So they're like, no, it's got to be plus. I'm a mainstream dancer. Got to be mainstream. Why? Well, you wouldn't want to be a monkey dancer, so I get it. But generally speaking, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. So review, or what we're going to do here is I'm just going to review these areas of focus. And the only one I missed out of there was rush to plus because I was relooking at my presentation at 12 o'clock last night. So current programs. This would give us one entry level around the world. One entry level. We just bring it down. Now, the main thing about that entry level is we're going to go, what you can think of it of going from 5 programs to 2. Technically, it's more like going 4 to 1. We'll take the basic 1, basic 2, mainstream, and basic and SSD, and make it 1 level of some sort. Now, the key here, size matters. Nobody, really? Nobody? Come on, I'm giving you a bone right there. Come on, Moni. All right, it matters, in fact, is we're going to make sure that it's got 50 calls. Basically, the resolution that we're trying to pass at CALLERLAB is there'll be a mandate that says whatever the entry level is, it'll never be more than 50 calls. For those of you that are callers in the room, you know that we have calling families. So you learn, promenade and single file promenade is in theory 1 call. Whoever decided that, I don't know. But the piece of paper that you'll get will have the number 50 at the bottom, and that's where it'll sit. As far as who picks that, that'll be the committees. It's not up to me. It's not up to everybody else. It'll be our CALLERLAB members that decide, that are on these committees and give their time to vote on this kind of stuff. And then the second level will have 50 calls minimum instead of 29. So if you look at this foursome and you put it together, there's about 90 something calls. You could do the math and figure it out, all the way up to plus. Effectively, that would take 50 calls on one side, on the entry level, and the plus program would need to add about 5 calls to start with, or somewhere in that range, to get it to 50. And where they get them from, I don't care, don't know. It's not me. I mean, they'll probably take some A1 or A2 calls down and move it there and bulk it up a little bit to get it to minimum of 50. So that now puts us 2 even ones on either side. 50 on this side to come in, 50 more if you want to move up. Not bad. Now, because this is my presentation, and I want you to know that I don't get a lot of decisions that I get to make by myself. Isn't that right, Teresa? She keeps me in check. But for posterity, I want to know, if I was a dictator, that's how I would do it. I'd make sure there was 50 here. I'd make the next one 60, and I'd get rid of advanced A1 and A2 and put 75 there. That would be me in a perfect world. Because if you do the math, all of this is here without changing anything. No new calls, no nothing, just where you stick them to get the math better. And I like that because I'm OCD. My wife's here too, she'll tell you. So that makes me feel nice and pretty and comfortable. And I think you earn something when you move and you do something like that. But it's not my perfect world, so we are back to that. And we'll start there. What they decide to do after that, that'll be whoever takes over from there. Right, Justin? So we'll see what happens at that point. So from here, again, we're going to use a mainstream and plus to at least start this and pass it because everybody knows what we're talking about and it seems easier. But don't be fooled if somewhere 2 years down the road somebody manages to change the name to something new. And I say like I know that's happening. I don't. I just know there's enough people that want to that it could pass. I'm fine with it the way it is, but why not social square dancing instead? Well, how many people have taken dance lessons other than square dance lessons somewhere? Any other type of dance lessons? How many took ballroom lessons? How many people took social ballroom lessons? It had the word social in front of it? Did you take social line dance lessons? Social, I mean, it seems kind of foolish when you think about it. Why? If you have to tell people you're social, you're not. So, as much as I like the idea that it's there, it's not. It's like telling, oh, my dog is friendly. No, it's not. Or if you got to say, yeah, I'm a really great guy. No, there's probably a red flag there someplace. So, anyways, it just seems easier to lose it when we come in everywhere in the world. The new person is learning to dance. They're learning to square dance. When they're done learning the square dance, you let them know that, hey, you finished at this level. Now, anywhere in the world, it could be basic 1, basic 2, SSD, mainstream, even plus in some cases. But that's where you tell them, in our world, now that you've crossed over to the other side, this is what we call it on this side. But everybody else in the world, we square dance. Doesn't matter if it's challenge, doesn't matter if it's A2 or plus. But they see us from the outside, it's square dancing. So, can't change that. Minor impacts to the current dancer population. You're going to stay with me on this one. So, if you know how to do SSD today, you know 53 calls. The list will only be 50 calls when we're done. I don't know what those are going to be, but odds are they're going to be pretty close to at least less than the 53 that you have. Probably not something new. I can't see anybody taking chain reaction and moving it over into the... People are weird, but we're going to try and cap that. So, in theory, all current SSD dancers should know the entire list of whatever we end up with our 50. So they're good to go. They're just going to be known as currently mainstream. Fine. All mainstream dancers know 60-something moves. Instead, they're going to have 50. So they'll have less calls. Now, I dance all over the U.S., and I got news for you. A lot of them can't do all 67 calls. The places that they do really well with that is Europe. They drill all of those calls. But if you were to do something we call a call count, if you go to the band hall at night and watch everybody dance for 2 hours and having all that fun and see how many times you see do paso or how many times you see spin chain through, you don't. There are certain ones that use, and if you look from the frequency down to the call, the most used down to the least used, you're going to find that there's a bunch of calls down here you rarely hear, and that's probably why a lot of our dancers are not very good at them. Thank you. So, I got one more. Okay, here we go. So, yeah, there'll be less calls, but again, also look at the enthusiasm in the dance hall. People don't care. At its core, they really don't care. As a caller, ask any caller, they can tell you. I can go to a plus dance and I can call an entire mainstream tip, and most people don't know unless I throw out a token, relay the doozy. And then they go, yay, I'm a plus dancer. Doesn't matter. But anyways, if you're a plus dancer, you're going to know everything that's already on there other than the few calls they bring down, and that's like any time every 3 years they add a call or two. So When you go to a dance, it'd be like triple scoot. Everybody remember when triple scoot just got moved and you got to your first dance and went, what? And the caller was, okay, it hasn't gotten to you yet. Let me teach it to you. You knew it, and 2 minutes later you were done. Same idea. There's going to be a few calls, and it's not a big deal. So all three of our existing programs really have minor impact to what is going on. Some, but minor to everybody. And all the new people coming in, they're not going to know the difference. So hopefully it's not that harmful. Take a look at the callers. I'm a little bit of a geek. One entry to rule them all. Anybody understand that at all besides me? All right, so with one entry level worldwide that we can focus on, one playbook that everybody coming in to use, come on, that's powerful. And that's going to help us a lot. You got to use the franchising mindset. You want to rubber stamp this, and ultimately CALLERLAB doesn't have the authority to police all of these things. All we can do is make suggestions. But really a franchising mindset of here's a club with it's a new entry level, here's your book, here's your new caller stamp, and now I want to do this 20 miles over here, and I want to do another one over here, and just create boom, 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 as many of these as we can. More user-friendly guides helps reduce the barriers to entry. The newer people hopefully come up a little faster. 50 calls is a lot easier to teach. I teach mainstream in 16 weeks, and I'll have you know I've done it a long time, and it is tough to get those people through that list in that amount of time. One thing goes wrong, we got to close the building because it's too hot, or the weather happens and I get 1 week behind, or somebody misses one class. Holy Toledo. And so I'm producing dancers and I can get it done, but they're not the quality dancers that I would like them to be, and I don't think they are themselves. And that does not, if you're not dancing well, that also has people leave because they don't feeling like they're doing well. SSD. So in here I'm like, adopt the mentality, lose the name. It's the same idea of 2 entry levels, and we really need that. And the playbook, good ideas. The word social, we can do without. Put it on your flyer, you'll be all right. Multi-cycle, make it the norm instead of the exception. Now, if you're a new caller and you think you can only teach this new entry level and it takes you 6 months to do it, have at it. I don't care if it takes you all year. If that's what you need, do it. But if you get somebody that's got 30 years of experience that could take this thing and teach it 4 times a year, have at it. We got to think outside the box. We don't, as long as we're all stopping at the same spot, it doesn't really matter. If it takes you 6 months to trade it, fine. It takes me 3 months, who cares? As long as we're all producing at the end result the same product, we'll be fine. Builds the base faster. How many people have had a class where you get maybe 1 square at the end of your year? Right? It's happened to all of us. If you hold this and you have 2 and you get 1 square at the end of each class, you've doubled what you had. So again, it builds, hopefully, the base faster, more opportunities. I can't fix everything. The rush to plus. If you want to teach plus, if California wants to go to plus, okay, all I'm going to do is make it a little bit more difficult for you because I'm going to make it 100 calls instead of 94. Now you got another week. But, I can't stop you to do that. Again, it's not a policing organization. But hopefully it'll slow things down a little bit. And while it's slowing things down a little bit, hopefully doing twice as much entry-level stuff will build that bottom faster than everybody can move up. Let's try to get ahead of the flow, as it will. So hopefully it'll double our intake. So ultimately, what happens next? Well, we need a plan to get it done. So where we're at today is we've taken feedback from everybody. We're here, we're talking to you, we've talked to members, dancers, different affiliates. I've been, again, on the phone with the European contingent. We are having a town hall next month, which will be me answering questions that our members have mailed in. We're trying to get a Zoom meeting together with the European people to see what's going on. I've talked to too many people in Australia this past week at weird times of the day in order to make sure that we're all on the same board. Because as we look and we focus locally, what sells this activity for a lot of people is the fact that we are worldwide and we can go anywhere. And if we go off on our own and nobody comes with us, we lose that. So we need to keep talking to these people and make sure they understand the who's, whys, and what it's supposed to help us. And for the most part, like Australia, very excited, the people I've been talking to. Europe is leaning towards being okay, though they are a little bit more vocal on the other side. Japan, touch and go, but we're working with them too. Got to talk to everybody as much as we can. When we thought about this idea with the 5 of us in the room, I'm not sure we thought we had to convince however many billions of people there are to go this way, because otherwise we may have just went down to the bar and forgot about the whole thing. But for us, all roads lead to our convention this coming up 50th. We took this show on the road. We're talking to you. I'm going someplace else. All of the BOG members have been talking to their local organizations, anybody who's a member of CALLERLAB, and anybody who asks when it's on social media. Again, over-communicate. Try to put some logic in front of you, see what's there, and hopefully that's enough to convince you that maybe there's time for something else different to happen. And then we're going to prepare to execute. What I mean by that is we have committees in CALLERLAB already. I have an SSD committee, and I have a basic and mainstream committee. They're working on their stuff normally. But then the next month or two, they're going to start working on whatever this list could be and start talking about what they would do. Because you got, when this thing, if it passes next, whenever it is, it's April, isn't it? Man, it's coming too fast. So if it passes next April, that's not when you start. You go, okay, it passed now. Now what are we going to do? We start now. Load up the chamber, get everything ready. They're starting to talk. So if you wanted to get involved in the conversation, you get involved now, because that's when they're going to start talking about things to set up the list. This is what we think we could do. How's everybody happy with this? What about this? So that if and when this thing passes, then all they do is go, okay, this is what we talked about. Are we still good with it? And then we officially vote it in and move. It's got to be those 2 first committees to get that first 50 list, because then they pass it off to the plus list. Now the plus people know what they got to deal with, what they're left with, and then they have to increase that size. But they're going to start talking about calls that they would add to the list over the next 6 months anyways, depending upon what's going on with the other one. We're getting ready to go. So we'll have all of these go. So like I said, if it passes, we'll combine these 2 committees and make one new one. And these guys, hopefully over the summer, will have a list for us. Then they're going to go back and double check, triple check, quadruple check their playbook. Can they update it? Can they do anything different? Can they get other stuff ready to go with it? Hopefully, that's going to be by the summer of 2026 at the latest, but in my mind, provided they don't do major changes, I should have this by my 2026 convention. Is that my time? Am I done? I'm just kidding. All right. And then the plus committee will take it from there. Now, the only other thing that I added on here, which may not be completely relevant for you guys, but again, in a Ted's perfect world, the DBD thing is a little tough. But people like it. What I'd like to see them do at some point in time, we've got this main level that we're dancing, and it'll be standard. Right, it'll be relatively easy to get these people in. But rather than teaching them the next list, have something called extended, or XM, extended mainstream. So you create a playbook that is easy, standard stuff, and then you got this group that's going on, and I'm a new caller, and like, man, I'd really like to showcase whatever call is there. It doesn't make a difference, split, circulate, but I'm not really sure how to do that. Let me go to my extended playbook and look up split circulate tonight. That playbook knows what's going on over here and finds things that are slightly more different, or things that you can add in there. And now this new guy is learning how to utilize the call a little differently and come back and showcase this one thing. As we as callers that have been doing it a long time can do it, it's in our head. We do it all the time. Go to a festival and it happens. The new guy, not so much. Takes a while to learn all that stuff. So put a second playbook in place, and then you keep them at the entry levels, because they're dancing this level, and then they're dancing a little bit harder in this level, and they get better and more quality dancers at this level. And at some point in time, you take that mainstream and XM, and then you move them to plus, and you do the same thing. Plus is standard, you're doing your regular gig, and right about there, that XP would be your DBD plus. Just call it something else. And to me, and now that takes them a little longer, because you're churning a little bit more in both of these areas without moving up. Oops, I think I hit the wrong button. My apologies. So the target for this would be September or fall of 2026. Hopefully we have the lists by around the spring of 2026. And then, again, we're going to be sending it out to all the clubs, everything else that's there. Social media will be packed with it, and hopefully we can start it then. Some people are like, can't you do it faster? I'm like, we haven't moved anywhere in 40 years. I think that's pretty quick, all things considered. I mean, 2.5 years to 40. I mean, give me a break. Okay, so I'm going to wrap this up for you so we can get out of here. So just a few things I want to leave with you when you're thinking about it here. This proposal is not just about going from 5 lists to 2, because a lot of people focus at the CALLERLAB on the lists. Like, why are they going on the lists? It's all about the lists. In this case, it's a necessary evil. We need to fix the foundation of what we've got because it's gotten out of hand. It's not going to be easy. We've fallen in love with what we have. But I and the rest of the callers that I know, I don't care what 50 calls you give me, I'll do it. Because I can, and almost everybody I know in this room can do it. It's the new people. I mentioned in my speech, it's time to start thinking about the other that come after what's in this room, right? I think about Story, Mayo, Kopman, things they left behind, the things that we're going to carry on with. For me, I'm 57. Not too bad, looking around. However, mom passed at 52 and dad at 59. So personally, in my head, I'm like, the finish line's pretty close. You never know, right? You never know. So I'm more worried about what happens when I go. Who's going to do it? Took me 36 years to get to do this. Who picks up this thing and does it when I go? Because in my area, there ain't. If I'm not there, I don't know who steps in and takes all my 4 classes. I don't have anybody ready to go, and nobody really wants to be ready to go yet. Some people are trying, and it's the same thing. If we've been to Milwaukee before. Was there a convention here prior ever, right? And we're here again. When was the last one here? 79. All right, so that's 40-ish, a little less than 40. 45. All right, who's going to be here in 45 years? Practically nobody in this room. Shut up, Teresa. But you want somebody in this room, right? We can't be selfish. You want somebody in this room. You want this to happen again. And if that means to change something now for the benefit of what's coming later, hey, I'm all in. I'll do whatever. What do you need me to do? Let's try and get something else done. So ultimately, it's an idea for a fundamental shift in how we think and interact with what's to come. What's the next generation of callers? We need to lay better groundwork than we've been doing in our structure and refocus the mindset on how we're going to survive down the line. Is this going to solve everything? No, it's not. But it certainly, hopefully, puts together a better, at least following the breadcrumbs to get some more people there in an easier fashion than it took you or I to get where we are at. And honestly, it's going to take everybody. I mean, I know we're going to have some naysayers out there, I get it, but if and when the majority want to go that way, man, we really got to take that walk and do it with them. So I appreciate your time. That's it in a nutshell. I made it 5 minutes under the wire. Thank you for coming.